This meeting is now being recorded.
Hey folks, just a reminder, we're going to give it a minute here until we have everybody show up. So if you just hang tight for a minute, we'll get going here shortly. Thank you. And also a reminder, it's *6 to mute your phone. But I think for now we're going to keep everybody on the line audio-wise so long as we're all polite. Yeah.
Hello everyone, this is Marina Milzer. I'm the data manager for the WWC. Nick just stepped out, but Chris is here and Angie as well. Before I hand it over to Nick, I just want to touch base on some things. First of all, *6 for mute or unmute. I also want to mention that So a quick reminder that we are not taking a roll call at this part of your progress reports that you submit to either Chris or Ivy. The main part of our discussion today will be preparing you for the data cleanup project that will be due prior to our next meeting in March. Therefore, we need to make sure that we cover any necessary or not so necessary but equally important items, as well as answering any questions to make the cleanup process not as heavy. I also like to mention the grant fund change letters that you should be expecting sometime around the next bill run in February. We are in the process of making decisions right now, which will take about 3 weeks. And then due to the holiday on February 15th, on the President's Day, I will be running the bills on that Tuesday, February 16th. So normally you receive your payments around about 2 weeks after the bill run. However, this time around, it will be about 3-4 due to the grant fund allocations. And I think that's all I wanted to mention, and we'll just wait until Nick is back, and he will take you through the tracking report and the data cleanup prep for everything.
This is Pat from Delta. Is this a webinar or just a phone conference?
This is will be a webinar. Can you not see the screen?
So is it the CenturyLink Web,
Yes.
WWC?
Yes.
Okay.
The eCaST, not WWC.
The eCaST, yeah.
Oh, that's where I'm wrong. Okay, I'll see if I can fix it. Thanks.
folks. We're going to run through a couple of things we've had questions on here lately, particularly with grant fund change letters coming through. We wanted to talk about some of the tools that we use in order to do budget tracking in eCaST. So I'm going to log in. This is the training site, so it's an exact copy of eCaST. However, it's been de-identified, so we can all have a peek. And the first one I'm going to run through is the budget tracking report. And this is basically a snapshot of your spending year to date. It's designed so you can look at any little section of the fiscal year, but really I think the intended use is to look from the start of the fiscal year to the current day to see what percentage expenditure you have going with WWC. So we'll click on Reports. And we're looking at the budget tracking. And one thing we did change in the fields for data entry in order to populate a report is in the fiscal year. It used to be just 1 year listed, which was fairly confusing because we know the fiscal year runs over 2-year cycles. So we've changed it from just being 2015 or 2016 to FY 15-16 for clarity. I think that was tripping a lot of folks up as far as using the correct fiscal year to run that budget tracking report. So for our current fiscal year, we're in 15-16. We're going to click on this one. We will always have the most recent fiscal year as the top of this drop-down. And you can, of course, go back and look at years past. As you can see, we've done our due diligence here, and we have populated in the future, which is semi-amazing. There's nothing to report there quite yet. But when we do flip over in July, this 16-17, we'll come back up here, and that'll be the first one that you can choose on the drop-down. So we're going to go with current year. And notice it goes to 16 after you select it. For our end date, we're going to demonstrate just today. So if we wanted to know what the expenditure is for our agency, and we're going to go with the awesome WIWO test agency. So it's a fake agency that's in our training site, so we will not be using any of you as an example. I'm sure you're happy to hear. And this is one piece for folks that have multiple contracts with us that's very important. It's the contract type dropdown. Now, WWC is for clinical services. Now, if you are a CCGP agency, this is where you would select CCGP in order to see your budget tracking report for that contract. So it is contract specific. Same goes for WIWO. If you want to look at those individually, you have to select them here in that drop-down. For our purposes, we're going to demonstrate WWC, and we're going to click Run Report. Now, some of these reports take a little bit of time to actually show up and produce an outputted report. Now, the reason for that on some of them is that they're very complex reports. The one that comes to mind is the Core Indicators report. The query that is the backbone of that report is extensive and complex. So when you do click on process, it takes a pretty long time for it to pop up. So this is what we're looking for, is this little disk icon. And once we click on it, it'll allow you to choose the way in which you want to export this report. Now, there are a lot of options here, and some of them are prettier than others, I'll say. The best option you have here is a PDF. We don't quite have it formulated so that the CSV works to a usable degree. It'll work and you can manipulate it, but really the PDF is where you want to go with this one. So once we click on that, if you are in Chrome, it'll show up here on your bottom toolbar. So we'll go ahead and click on that in 1 second. The other thing I wanted to demonstrate is that if you click on that disk icon and click on PDF, and you don't have this toolbar on the bottom, the place that you can find any report that you download is in your Downloads folder. So that'll be right here, the most recent one brought up. We just did that a few seconds ago. So you can access the PDF in your Downloads folder, or you can get it on your screen right here. So we'll click on that. And this will show you your screening cap amount, as well as the year-to-date that's been paid, the percentage of the fiscal year we are through, and then the percentage of funds expended. So we're looking mainly at these two columns, the of these two pieces of data is how far are we through the fiscal year and how much of our funding have we expended so far. It'll also give you a differential with the 12.6 here. So this tool is intended for you to be able to take a look at what your allotted expenditure is, where you are so far through the fiscal year, and what percentage you would need to make up for that. So that is one tool we're going to talk about today. Does anybody have any questions on the budget tracking report? And that's all right. The other one I wanted to show you, and this has been tricky for folks here too, is the grant activity statement report, which is right here under budget tracking. My user settings are a little different. That's why you see so many reports in here. So I have access to everything. So the same thing here, we've changed up the fiscal year so that it says 15-16. That one actually sticks, which is nice. And the same lesson applies with contract type for the grant activity statement. You'll notice that you can individually pick the WIBO contract, CCGP, or WWC, which is clinical services. So for this demo, we're going to choose WWC. We're going to stick with our Awesome WIBO test agency. It is a dummied up agency. Now, for any month that you want to see the grant activity statement, we advise that you choose the very beginning day of the month and then the very end. And the reason for that is that the date in which the bill run occurs can vary due to a number of things. If we're having any systemic issues at all or we've changed up billing, it may happen later in the month. If we have holidays, it may happen a little earlier. We aim for the 15th of the month, usually go with the nearest business day that is not a Friday to run the bill run. So for instance, if we want to take a look at the calendar here, next month, 15th is President's Day, so 16th will be the bill run. Correct, Marina? Excellent. So in demonstrating how to run this report, because we have not switched Train over or copied our production environment to Train, I'm going to use the month of September because I know it'll kick data out for us. So if you were looking for the most recent one, you would choose September or January 1st and then January 31st. For this demonstration, we're just going to use September because I know that it will produce data for us. Now here's another option on this report. It's the way in which it kicks out, it'll give you every client ID number for every client that has billed within that month's bill. So this will give you the September bill, the client ID number. Now if you want more than that, if you want the patient's name and date of birth, you would select yes on PHI. For our purposes, I'm going to pick no. We are in a de-identified environment, but I'm just not going to mess with it at all. So we're going to click Run Report. Another note on this report is that if you want to see the entire fiscal year's worth of stuff, you can go from January 1st to the current day as an end date, and it will give you a huge long grant activity statement. But I think we do prefer that you look at it to June 30th.
June 30th.
That's right, Chris. And it will allow for you to see all of the grant activity statements there. Now, because we do the first bill run of the month in August, you're going to catch it all even if you go with August 1st, but June 30th is correct. That's when the fiscal year does start. So we'll go with PDF. And again, it'll either get you the download in the toolbar down here or in your downloads folder. It's gone to the grant activity statement. So this is an output of all the patient IDs for all of the clients that have had a procedure and or screening that has billed. It also tells you the date of the last procedure. That's what the billing is based on. So we do bill out once there is complete data entry. So that's what this last date or date of last procedure is telling you is the last procedure entered into eCaST. And that's what the billing is based on, completed data entry. Also give you the cancer type, whether it's cervical or breast. And then we'll tell you the billing level at which that screening resulted, and also the numerical value of each one of those levels. Yes, Chris?
Does this report show adjustments? It does.
I believe it does show adjustments.
It will show adjustment in parentheses. Oh, throughout? I wasn't sure what the report. Yeah. So they don't just
sorted by date of completed last procedure. So it'll start with the earliest one in July and end in August. So Marina, you're saying if we do an adjustment on here, you should see it in parentheses.
Yes.
So that would be an instance where, let's say you filled it out and you had a breast screening and it went to a CBE and CBE was normal, and you put follow routine screening, which would pay you out at a B1. So you had that and it was completed in the previous bill run. Now you've gone back in and added the MAM, which was also negative, so everything's fine with the client, and you put routine screening. You would see an adjustment from a B1 to a B2. So you would see the difference between the 2 and the 1 paid out.
Yeah, only the negative.
Only the negative show up in parentheses. Okay. Only if we're taking money back does it show up in parentheses. Ooh, the parentheses. That's just like the red triangle. So that's how we run our grant activity statement report. And those are the two main ones for tracking fiscal fund in eCaST. And those were the two that we wanted to demonstrate today. This is the two we've had the most questions on here lately, particularly pertinent with the grant fund change letters coming up and another bill run coming up in February. And I'll leave it as an open forum to folks. Does anybody have any questions on running these reports or just reports in general? Okay. Well, I think that's all we had for the report running fund, unless anybody has any feedback or comments on the reports. The other thing I was going to show you was and talk about was that our data cleanup project is coming up here in February. It actually starts that same week of the bill run, so that short 4-day week. We'll be sending out the individualized sheets for folks to do data cleanup. Interesting. For folks that are unfamiliar, this is our biannual cleanup project. It used to be called Data Palooza, and it actually used to occur starting in March. However, because we have the Wise Women program as a data submission that's a little earlier than WWC regular services or clinical services, we have now matched up the data cleanup projects between Wise Women and WWC CCGP. So everything will occur at the same time. If you are an agency that has multiple contracts, Steve Bromby is your contact for Wise Woman. I'm your contact for all other data cleanup fund. So if you're an agency that has both, in this cycle, we're working to make sure that we send everything to you at once instead of giving you multiple emails with different instructions. But just to be clear, there will be a separate data cleanup sheet for Wise Woman. I know Steve has a demonstration and training for that, and there will also be one for WWC. The example you're seeing on the screen is the WWC data cleanup sheet. In our last iteration, we changed up the way in which this sheet appears. In the previous Data Palooza construct, we had breast and cervical as these top columns, and then would break them out into timeliness and completeness. Instead, what we've done for this second round of trying it this way, and the feedback we got last time was very positive on this sheet, is that what we do now is that the way in which you are not meeting an indicator will show up in this H column. So in this instance, it took 60 days between the first abnormal and the final diagnostic procedure, meaning that if you had an abnormal result in a screening procedure, one of the indicators is that you will have it all the way through diagnostics within 60 days. So this is an indication that you need to go into this individual client ID and then their cycle and this exact screening and have a look at the dates for those individual procedures and make sure that the data entry is correct, that the dates you put in are accurate. And another thing that we're looking for on the timeliness is that we may have a short-term follow-up case. So if you have a really extended period of time between your screening procedures and your diagnostics, we want you to take a look at it and see if there was a scheduled wait for short-term follow-up. Do we need to break up a screening and diagnostic cycle into screening and diagnostics, but then also short-term follow-up? We do have a dedicated training for this that will be sent out to everybody before we do the data cleanup project. So do not fret if you're not taking all of this in at the current time. The idea is to just give you a heads up that we'll be sending these sheets out. For individual agencies, it can be one screening that we're asking you to take a look at. Some agencies will have none. And others that do a little higher volume, you can have anywhere from 30 to 50 to take a look at. So we will kick this project off in the second week of February, actually the week of the 16th. And what we'll ask is that you take a look at all these individual cases, take a look at the indicator that they are missing, and then fill out these sections. Now, we ask that you use every green section in here requires a response from the drop table. So if you go in and you see that, yeah, these dates are accurate, and unfortunately it's more than 60 days, but it is what it is, you would put that the data is accurate and still not meeting the indicator. If you went in and realized that one of the dates was not accurate, and then it comes within 60 days, you would put that the data is updated in eCaST and now meeting the indicator. If you need help on this specific one, you need help, basically for me, so I'll be looking at all these sheets, just click on the need help from the CDPHE to correct. When you resubmit it to me, I'll go in and have a look at it, and then we'll work on it via email on making sure that we have all accurate data for that specific screen. If you need any notes or comments, a lot of folks will put in that the client has lost a follow-up. All comments should go in the purple box, whether it's in this column, this main section here, or in the data errors column. You'll note that the one that we have exampled here is the treatment start date. That's a very important piece of the indicators that we meet. And what we're asking you to do that when we come up with a diagnosis, we want to double check and make sure that we don't have a treatment start date for that individual. And what we'd ask that if you do have one, that you'd update the final diagnosis section, and then we'll fill it out appropriately here. So if you've changed it and updated it to a treatment start date being in the final diagnosis section, you would mark data updated in eCaST and it's now meeting the indicator. If you do not have a treatment start date available, that's all right. We're just asking you to check. You need to put the data as accurate and still not meeting the benchmark. If you need help on it, you can always click on the need help piece, which will give an indication to me that I need to touch base with you on how we're going to approach this individual screen. Again, if you need to put instructions or ask questions or make comments, the purple field is the place to do it. So what we're asking when you get these sheets is to fill out all of the green boxes, and then if you need to make comments, to place them in the purple box. So we will have a master sheet ready the week before the bill run, and Marina will hand that over to me. So Marina is our data manager and the master of all of our eCaST data. So she will send me the big sheet, and I will parse it out into individual agencies. And for some agencies that have a lot of sites, we do parse it into individual sites. We'll send those along to you along with instructions on how to complete it. We do have a dedicated training for this exact process, so fear not if you are not remembering everything I am saying right now. The deadline for submitting those back to me is going to be a month after we send them out. That information will also be included in the email to you on how to properly perform the data cleanup project. In going to this new format in the last iteration, which has been September, I feel like it went a lot smoother, and folks had their sheets back to me in some instances hours after I sent them to you, which was amazing. My head almost exploded. It was great. So I'm looking forward to another successful cleanup. We don't know our total number of items that need to be cleaned quite yet, but we'll know that in a couple of weeks. Does anybody have any questions on the data cleanup project or timelines or just questions in general?
Can you remind me at what point a cycle is
cycle is read-only. If you have a short-term follow-up diagnosis, it will go read-only after 2 weeks. If you are doing a short-term follow-up cycle, once you save it, 2 weeks later, it'll also go to read-only.
Okay. So one of these guys up here is, they're not short-term follow-up, doesn't look like. So is it 2 weeks?
That's a great question. For those that are not short-term follow-up, Marina, do you know what the expiration is on it? I thought it was 6 months. It's a long, extended period of time. But to get back to a point that Chris is making, when we send you all of these items in the data cleanup sheet, some of them inevitably are going to be short-term follow-up, either diagnoses or cycles. And what we do for the cleanup project is that we open all those expiration dates up for the entire time frame of the cleanup project so that you can then access, add, and or take away information as needed. Now, it'll only happen for those that are listed in the sheet. For regular course of business, say you did a short-term follow-up cycle, you added a couple of diagnostic procedures, you either need to edit one of those or add another procedure, but you have read-only coming up, that's when you need to email me and I can open up that screening so that you can do data entry in it and complete the short-term follow-up cycle and screen. So for the data cleanup project, we open them up so that folks don't have to see the read-only message. For regular course of business, that stays in place, and if you need to add something to a short-term either diagnosis or a short-term cycle, you'll email me and I can open it up for you so that you can continue to do data entry and or edit as you need or see fit. Great question. So folks, do we have any questions about the data cleanup project, about short-term follow-up cycles, read-only fund, grant fund change letters, grant activity statements, budget tracking, any of the reports? You'll note that we have not made any changes in eCaST for a while. And the reason for that is that we're still working on developing a 2.0 version of it. So the way eCaST currently functions is going to be very much the same here for the next anywhere from 6 to 8 months, I think would be a short guess on that. I do know one hiccup that we're seeing in eCaST, and we are working to figure out exactly why this is happening. And I know some of you have run into it because you've emailed me about it. It's for whatever reason when you end up with a pending cycle. Let me get back to the eCaST page. So it's the pending cycle. So you've gone in, you've started a cycle, and then for whatever reason, either you've timed out, so somebody came in to chat and you timed out of eCaST, or you realized you didn't have all the information in front of you and it saved what you had. When you look for a client, it should have a pending cycle, resume pending cycle on the bottom of that cycles page. Let me go into just a clinical cycle to show you what that would look like or where it would be. So on this page, you would have the additional button of resume a pending cycle. Now, for what I can tell, there would be about 99% of cases, when you go back in to start a pending cycle, it allows you to go right back to where you left off doing data entry. But for some cases, it gives you the sorry error that blanks out the entire page and won't allow you to move forward at all. To the folks that have emailed me about this, I thank you for giving me as much background as to what steps you were taking before it happened. You haven't been able to isolate exactly what causes that error to occur. But on a daily basis, I go in and look at all of our pending cycles, and anything that's longer than a day, that's been sitting there for a day or more, we take out so that you can start the cycle anew and not have to end up with that error constantly. So we do regular maintenance on the pending cycles to make sure that you don't get stuck in that, what I'm calling the pending cycles loop of death. It essentially doesn't allow you to add anything for that client at all. Does anybody have any questions on that? Of course, when and if you run into anything in eCaST that is either troubling or causes you pause, or you just have a question about, you can always email me. I'll be happy to help. Well, if we don't have any questions on the topic so far, there was one other issue that we wanted to address, and it's in regard to enrollments in eCaST. As we all know, the consent is not something that we need to re-up every year, nor do we need to do legal presence every year. If they're a new client, those things are required. If they are an existing WWC client, they are not. But we do still require that you check the client's insurance information. And Chris, help me out. What else are we looking for?
Income.
And income.
Income needs to be verified annually, and insurance status is required to be verified for every procedure.
So, while we are not doing a consent on an annual basis, nor are we doing a legal presence check, we still need on every year for you to check the client's insurance information and their income information. Now, the day in which you do that is going to be your enrollment date. Let me show you what I'm talking about. It's a lot of too many numbers. Just trying to get to that add a client button.
Okay.
So we said we filled out all the information in the client profile here, and we're going to add that first enrollment right here. Should have done it to an existing client. Yep, let's do that. Sorry, I'm going to back out and find an existing client and go into their profile. If you want to go to their profile page, click on their name in the screening errors table, and that will allow you to get directly here. So let's say we wanted to add an enrollment for this individual. They've already come in 12/22/2015. Legal presence is already checked because we've already done legal presence for this client within the time frame allowed. So what we're asking you to do for each year that they come in for their annual visit, that you're filling out a new enrollment each time they come in. So say this was next December of 2016, we would ask you to verify their type of insurance as well as the entire enrollment section here. So we'd fill out all of these items again. You do need a fresh enrollment in eCaST in order to add new screens.
Hello?
Hello? Hi, I'm sorry, do you have a question?
Oh, sorry.
Oh, no worries. So for
How do we add new enrollment?
adding a new enrollment, you can do in a couple of places. You can do in the profile like we just did here.
Oh, that one.
So we've got, oh, that's all right. They're already existing person, so we've got the enrollment here. So we can click on this. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm clicking on the wrong one. You've got to click on add a new record. Now here the legal presence should already be checked. I'll have to check on that in production. Then we'd ask you to fill out the same enrollment information that we've had you do every year. So while you don't need to, in office, verify legal presence or do a consent, in eCaST, you do need to do an enrollment every year for the individual, just like we've always done.
And don't forget the consent and lawful presence affidavit need to be in the client's chart.
That's a very good point.
So if they're not there, they need to do it.
If you don't have documentation, it's a good idea to review both the legal presence and the consent. I agree. So this is one place where you can add an enrollment to a client. I'd like to demonstrate just the other place that you can do it. So let's see. Just going to copy their ID number and go back to the home page and wait for it to completely fill. So you search for the individual, and you can either go to the profile and add a new enrollment, or you can go directly to a new cycle. So let's start a cycle for today. And we'll just call it Screening and Diagnostics for demonstration purposes, and click Add. So you've gotten to a cycle, you've started a new one, but we have, let's say, an old enrollment in here. You can also add an enrollment on the screenings page right here. Let's fill one out. Now the enrollment dates come into question as well. That's the date in which you verified the type of insurance for the individual and their income. We're going to stick with the same type of stuff here. There we go. Here is no. Monthly income. Gives you a percentage of poverty. Let's say you saw us in a newspaper. We'll hit save. Now you've added a new enrollment, and when you add a new one, it automatically checks it. So it'll assume that when you go in here to create, say you're going to put in a new breast screening, hit create new screening. Come on, training environment, you can do it. And then from here you can choose your body part. And go on to add medical history and procedures from there. Those are the two places you can add an enrollment, and a little bit of guidance on how we still need to add an enrollment every year for clients, even though we don't need to do the consent or legal presence on an annual basis anymore. Does anybody have any questions on that topic? I know that one's a little tricky because it's kind of half no longer having to do what we used to do every year, but still annually putting an enrollment in eCaST. All right, I can't tell if everybody's hit *6 and muted yourselves or what, but if there are no further questions, I think we'll open it up just to general questions about eCaST. Chris or Angie or Maria, do we have any other topics we'd like to cover today? I think we've covered all the items that we wanted to hit.
I can I guess I want to encourage people to send me an email if you have an MRI or a second breast biopsy or a second cervical biopsy that needs to be reimbursed. These are procedures that are reimbursed on top of usually a C4 or a B4. So it's an additional payment that on the back end I need to approve in order for it to show up on the next bill run. So if you have any of those, make sure you email me so I can get that done.
That's a great point.
Because otherwise, you don't get paid more. Otherwise, you don't get, your agency does not get reimbursed. Correct.
Yeah. And you can enter it in eCaST all you like. Until you email you and get it verified, it will not show up on that board. Right. Well, all right, folks.
Hi,
in lieu of
Anna from St. Joe's. Sorry, Nick.
Hey, you're all right.
I do have a question, and I'm sure this is the wrong forum for my question, but when you were entering a BP1 for a wise woman, the errors will not go away in eCaST that say doesn't have 3 tests, still needs risk reduction, and it just drives me bonkers because then I'm like, I have to make notes and leave it on my computer that this is not actually a problem. Stop checking it every day.
Yeah, I can see that. wanting to put your forehead into your monitor. I hear you. Unfortunately, I'm not the individual for the answer on that. But you do need to email Stephen Bromby. He's your tech assistance lead for all Wise Women things at eCaST. But it sounds like we may have a bug there or potentially a data issue. So Shanna, if you would, do you have Steve's contact?
Yes. I bug him like I bug you.
Please continue to do so. You asked very good questions.
Okay. Thank you.
That is a good reminder that if you do have Wise Women questions, Stephen Bromby is your contact for all things eCaST, clinical services, CCGP. I am your contact for those. And you can send any question eCaST related my way. I'll happily send it along to the resident expert. For example, if you do have billing questions, Marina is going to be our expert on that piece of eCaST. You can always send them to me and I'll send them along. So if you ever wonder where to send an email about eCaST, you can always send it to me and I'll send it out from there and make sure we have the right person on it. But Shanna, please send Steve an email and let him know that you're having that issue.
Shanna, VP Plus is so new that Steve is fielding a lot of calls on that, so don't hesitate to email him. I'm sure he will get right back to you.
That's true. We did some system change on the Wise Woman part of it, which anytime you do an overhaul or add a new kind of fold to how things were working, we do like to make sure that it has the intended result at the end. It sounds like we need a double look on that one. So and I agree, Steve is a little backlogged with a lot of the changes, so email is probably the best route. And that goes for me as well. Email me, please. Email me as much as you want. There's no question that you can't ask. I'll happily get back to you as soon as humanly possible.
Hi, this is Teresa from Salud. I just wanted to have some clarification on what they had said about that biopsy. I couldn't hear very well.
Oh, okay.
I'll get a little bit closer.
Yeah, you're kind of far. I couldn't hear you.
Okay, thank you. Can you hear me okay now?
Now I can.
Okay, thanks. So anytime a patient has an MRI and you enter it into eCaST, that MRI can be paid in addition to a B4. So it's an additional reimbursement and not necessarily included in a B4. The same with a second breast biopsy that's done on a different day and a second cervical biopsy. So those are procedures that are not normally included in a B4 or a C4 level payment. But they all need to be approved after they're entered by me in order for Marina to include them on the following bill run. If I'm not notified of them, I don't know about them, so they don't get paid out on top of the B4 or C4.
Okay.
So, for instance, if a patient had a colposcopy, let's see, let me think of a cervical one. One would be that a provider removed a polyp and sent it to pathology. You can count that as the first cervical biopsy. The pap smear of the polyp came back abnormal, and she now needs a colposcopy. That would be the second biopsy, and that would be paid out in addition to a C4.
Oh, okay.
Does that make sense?
It does. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions on that?
I think one other thing that I wanted to talk with folks just in general about is when you do email Steve or Marina or myself or Angie, if you are ever emailing about a client in eCaST, we ask that you just use the client ID number, the cycle ID number, and or the screening ID number. And what we want to refrain from is using any patient's name or date of birth or any personally identifying information. I know folks are very good about that, but I think just to put a reminder out is always a good idea. So if and when you run into an issue in eCaST, please email me just the client ID number, cycle number, and or screening number, and what issue you're having. I'm telling you, 90% of the time when you just send me the ID number, I can look at it and see what we have going on and how we need to address it. So thank you all for being very good about that, and let's continue to do so. Do we have any other eCaST questions? Any questions at all? All right, folks, so I think that's it from us on this one. Coming up a little short on time, so we'll let you loose earlier for the afternoon. Thank you all for attending. Thank you for the questions. And good luck in eCaST, and data cleanup is coming your way. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good day, all.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.